Hey everyone, this is Destro Realm, I'm Destro, and welcome to the very first video on my channel. Today we'll be diving into one of the most intense seasons of Jujutsu Kaisen yet. Season 3, The Culling Games. With that being said, if you love deep dives and breakdowns of any kind of anime, Marvel, DC, or any other nerdy topic, go ahead and subscribe to my channel, like this video, share it with your friends, and go ahead and follow me on all social media platforms at Destro Realm. Now this battle-heavy episode revolves around Yuta, the absolute powerhouse, basically doing a 1v3 in the Sendai colony, which is an insane feat on its own. But before I get into that, I would be absolutely remiss if I didn't get into one of the most disrespectful things Yuta has ever done in the series. And before Yuta got in a 1v3 in the Sendai colony, he came across Dhruv Lokdawala. Now if you're unfamiliar with Dhruv, that's understandable. He was only on screen for a short time until Yuta killed him in mere seconds. Dhruv was about 1800 years old and was one of the most powerful sorcerers to have ever existed, probably one of the most powerful sorcerers we've seen in JJK yet. Now this can mean one of two things. Either Gege is the biggest troll alive, or he just wanted to show how powerful Yuta was. And boy did he do that. And with Yuta taking him out with such disrespectful ease, it allowed the other three to finally hone in on Yuta and make their moves. Now one of the first players to come at him is actually not a sorcerer, but rather a cursed spirit. The cursed spirit is a cockroach cursed spirit named Kurarashi. Now, Kurarashi is a pretty strong cursed spirit. However, up against Yuta, doesn't really matter. However, Yuta notices that the other two are watching him, and he doesn't want them to know that he can use reverse curse technique. He also has Rika protecting innocent civilians at a stadium. Trying to eliminate Kurarashi without using reverse curse technique or Rika seems pretty difficult at first until he finally bites into the face of Kurarashi and exercises him that way. Or so we think. Then enters Takako, who essentially has the power to bend space, and that power would typically be OP if used correctly. However, she seems to have a grudge against the Fujiwara clan from back in her era. She ends up discussing with Yuta what her regrets are and why she wanted to come back to have a second chance. They end up fighting for a little bit. Yuta ends up escaping, but then they get third party by Ishigori. And of course the animation looks incredible. You have Yuta running away from Ishigori's beams and everything looks so fluid. It's absolutely incredible. Mappa killed it again. Ishigori talks about how he's unsatisfied because in his past life, he wasn't properly satiated. And what do we mean by that? Well, we get into it a little bit later. Ishigori's main power is a light cannon beam that he can shoot out of his hair, of all things, which actually sounds ridiculous but is actually pretty OP, and it gives you some great fight scenes. Not only do they have incredible fight scenes where they're shooting beams and Yuta's dodging and also fighting back, but also just the hand-to-hand combat scenes are incredible amongst these two. Takako ends up catching back up with him and decides to try and take Yuta on all alone again. However, at this point, Yuta has gotten pretty fatigued from fighting not only 1, 2, but 3 enemies already. And it's at this point that he calls in reinforcements via Rika. And just when you think the fight can't get any more crazy, Yuta and Ishigori start going at it while Takako ends up bending the space beneath their feet. And as the fight seems to be coming to a climax, they engage in a 3-way domain expansion, which looks like it's about to be one of the most epic things ever, until it's ruined by a completely unexpected guess. Guess who's back? You guessed it, Kurarashi. And because Kurarashi was unexpected, the barriers of this domain ended up collapsing.
Oh, brother, this guy stinks!
After that, Ishigori uses his discharge cannon to essentially take out Takako and Kurarashi. However, Kurarashi is still alive, and Yuta ends up taking him out after all in the end. With those two out of the picture, with Takako being unconscious, not dead, Yuta and Ishigori are able to have a 1v1 finally. The two of them end up displaying their power, with Yuta eventually coming out on top, even using one of Takako's techniques after he stole it from her, essentially. With the fight between Yuta and Ishigori concluded, the scene then switches over to Yuta sitting next to Ishigori as he wakes up. And as Ishigori wakes up, he notices that he's alive and so is Takako. He then thinks that Yuta is too soft for not being able to finish them both off. However, it's then that Yuta explains he only didn't finish them off because he needs their points to win the game. Thus concluding the end of the episode as well as the end of the season. Now this season ends on a major cliffhanger, what's going to happen with the rest of the characters, what's going to happen next in the Culling games. However, you don't have to worry about that because from what I hear, Season 4 is supposed to be coming out sometime early 2027. And with that being said, I'm sure you guys are just as excited as I am to see what the rest of the Culling games has in store for us. Thank you guys for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.